Share screen with sound,
Hear me?
the one we want.
Guys, it's usually the challenge is just not in the middle. People ask me, or they tell me, hey, it's really challenging when you're doing self-tie ties and you have to make that knot. Like that's a little struggle sometimes. And my friends, I have actually seen this is probably one of the challenges with conversations today and presentations like this, which is the TIE. How do you tie it together? Okay. I know that you're here, you're present, you're going to engage, but most importantly, what are you going to walk away with? What are you going to do beyond the discussion to drive the impact or any of the changes you wish to see, if that's your choice? So I encourage you to take notes or to explore your curiosity as we have this conversation. So if that makes sense to you, and if you agree with those rules, okay, we're on Zoom, so you have a chat feature. I want you to go to the chat box right now. If you agree with that, and if it makes sense, this bow tie deal, write the word bow tie. Okay, in the chat box right now. Go ahead and type the word bow tie if you agree with our rules for today. Be here, be open, be willing, okay? And most important, let's tie it together. Okay, I'm expecting, I'm seeing some bow ties come through this chat feature right now. Mike, if there's no bow ties in this chat feature, I think we need to stop, and I will see you all when I come back at for Q&A, okay? But I am going to assume that we're going to have some bow ties. So let's get started with what we're going to really talk about in this conversation today. And so here's a quick, this is a quick level set of the outline because we don't have a lot of time today together, but I'm going to kind of walk through, you know, what is this DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I call it DEI. Some people have different acronyms and it stands for different things, but what I am talking about is diversity, equity, inclusion. Why is it important to RYLA? What opportunities do we have in our program? And what are some of the top challenges that I've seen, like I say, locally and globally in our program? And most importantly, I'm going to give you some recommendations of what you can do about some of those challenges as we talk through it. So what is diversity? And why do we start there, my friends? Well, I like to level set here. And I like to start with the conversation of what these words mean to me. Why? Because when we have these sessions, and I learned this by being a global practitioner and working with several different companies, is that people show up to these words very differently. So it's very, very important as you have these conversations back in your club or your community or within your program, it's great to just understand what these words mean to each other. But this is what I mean as I position the word diversity, okay? Diversity to me is twofold. Diversity is visible and invisible differences that make someone complete, okay? So visually you see me on camera right now. You see a good looking brown guy over here with a bow tie on. That is my visible difference. Invisible, you may not know that I'm one of 13 kids. I can hablar Espanol, follow Portuguese. I am a proud Rotarian since the age of 23, and I brought the average age of my club down to 74. So, and I'm in a very large club. But that's my invisible difference, okay? So that is, I want people to understand when we say this word diversity, it is important what you see on the outside. That is very, very important because representation matters. But it's also the things you can't see, right? Your ideas, your mindset, your faith, your sexual orientation, your abilities, etc. Okay? Those are all just as equally as important when we talk about the word diversity. Let's go to this next word that we throw around a lot lately. Inclusion. What is inclusion? Well, inclusion to me is very, very simple. Inclusion is creating an environment, creating a space where we behave in a way that we respect all these visible and invisible differences. That is inclusion. Now, you don't just stop with respect. You know, I think also inclusion is a space where people are seen and heard. Okay. Now you may be asking, Dr. Jenkins, why did you put heard in your definition? Well, my friends, I tell you today, how many of you all know you could be doing a lot of talking, but that does not mean anyone is listening, okay? That's why it's very, very important that if you strive for the climate and culture and space of inclusivity, people must be seen and heard. Now, I'm not saying that inclusion is saying that every idea that's proposed will be implemented. No, no, no. Inclusion is ensuring that everyone has the space and they belong, that they could contribute. And I also don't say that inclusion means that everyone is going to agree. Okay, so let me be very clear. Last but not least, I don't believe you could talk about true inclusion without talking about equity. Okay, now it is a difference. You heard I said equity, I did not say equality. And it's a difference between equity and equality. I do believe in equality, but I want to challenge you to think about equity. And you may say, well, okay, what's the difference here? Because I just want to show up and treat everyone fair and equal. Well, equity is different than equality. And you know, the best way I can explain this is think of my shoe. This is actually my shoe up here. I wear a size 10 and a half brown in this, and I love the color brown shoe. Where equality is you get a shoe, Mike, you get a shoe, you even get a shoe. Okay, it's like Oprah, everybody gets shoes. Okay, that is equality. But equity is giving everyone on this call a shoe that fits them. And you have to think about that. Even I have to think about that. I actually have to spend some more time, effort, and energy to actually get to know you one-on-one and ask you, what's your shoe size? What color would you like to wear? Would you even like to wear a shoe, etc.? But I guarantee you, if I ask you those questions and spend that extra time, effort, and energy, I want you to think about it. How will you feel? Also, how will you feel if I give you the shoe that feels good to me and it's my size, but it doesn't fit you? You may feel pretty uncomfortable. But here's the point, my friends. We actually have people in our programs. We actually have people in our clubs, people in our communities, in our workplace, showing up every day with shoes that are given to them, but does not fit them, and they're forced to wear them. Just think about that. Okay, that's another presentation, so I'm going to come back to that later. But here's another great illustration of looking at the differences between equity and equality, a great visual. If you probably have seen this all across social media, but if this is your first time seeing this, it's basically these individuals are trying to have access to the baseball game, to have visibility and access. Well, you can see the difference of the crate from equity to equality. Do you know I work with corporate leaders every day, and sometimes when I show this picture, I still have individuals ask me, Dr. Jenkins, so what you're saying is that this is a short people initiative. And I have to say, no, my friends. What we're not talking about, and we're not questioning the height, but what we're talking about is the structural barriers to opportunity. That's what we're talking about when we talk about equity, okay? And the reality, whether you like it or not, something that you or I probably not create, the reality is that we're not all showing up with the same resources and opportunities daily. That's the reality, okay? And you can also, and I want you to think about that. What is that reality for you personally? Because so many times when we talk about these initiatives, we think about everyone else, but I want you to think about yourself. What is your reality? What is your story? Okay? And then I want you to take a deeper dive and say, what is the reality of your community in which you live and serve? What is the reality of your RYLA program? What is that reality? And think about that, my friend. And you may be asking, so why are we having this session today, Todd? Why are we talking about this? Well, we see in research that why this is important, right? We also see this in theory and in practice, okay? And it shares with us that it's important because if we get this right, my friends, if we continue to strive for the journey of inclusivity, it makes us all bigger, better, and stronger together as Rotarians, as volunteers, as community leaders, but most importantly, our students who are in our program, our youth. It really makes us all better collectively. And we're all trying on this journey to just really strengthen our communities and leave it better than we found it. And inclusion is the glue for that success. And that's why we're having the conversation. And why? Because I feel that we have a lot of opportunities to do bigger and better in Rotary Youth. Rotary Youth programs like RYLA, Youth Exchange, Rotaract, Interact, I could throw any name. So I don't want you to say that, oh, this is just only RYLA. We're the only ones who have, no, anything that engaging with our youth, we have opportunity. We even have opportunity among ourselves in our clubs around diversity, equity, and inclusion, okay? And what better fitting theme? Look at our theme this year by President Hoger, Rotary Open Opportunities. So we want to continue to open arms as we continue to strengthen our RYLA program. And I tell you that, you know, some of the biggest things we can do is, of course, we can strengthen our program, but we can continue to engage our participants and the RYLA alumni, individuals who actually participate in our program, right? That's an opportunity, because so many times I see is that once a participant leaves the program, what happened to them, especially if they don't come back and be like a junior counselor or a leader and trainer at LIT, whatever your program form or fashion. So we have an opportunity there. We also have an opportunity to not only have a one-stop shop with the RYLA annual program. We can continue to be a community partner throughout the entire year. And you'll see why that's important later. And I definitely think we still have opportunity, especially in the midst of what's happened today with the pandemic and so much happening in our society, to continue to be creative and to think outside the box, right? And to really stretch our imagination of building inclusivity in our programs and diversity. So, and I really do. I have not met well, actually, they haven't came to my session, of anyone who has not told me, Todd, I don't feel like we have an opportunity to make our program more welcoming, inclusive, and diverse. So I hope that you all see the opportunity here. But I don't want to, like I said earlier, I could talk about a lot of opportunities, but I also want to talk about some of the top challenges that we see in the Rotary Youth program. And I want to share with you some of those challenges and what you can do about it. The number one challenge, here we go. The number one challenge that I see all across the country and potentially all across the world is the self-awareness and education around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Most of these things look like an unconscious bias, right? People are not aware of their own personal identities and their preference and their biases that shows up in how we facilitate our programs. Now, I'm talking about us first, volunteers, the ones who actually facilitate the program, or the ones we collaborate with on our committee or vet applications. Okay, let's go a step further. What about the people we choose to recruit from, the recruiting sources, right? The applicants that we always go through. You know, sometimes we have preference in that alignment. Sometimes I speak to a lot of RYLA camps. I'm one of the speakers that, you know, come in and help do talks to the students. And sometimes they tell me, the Rotarians say, Todd, we have the best and brightest from this school. And I said, well, what about all the other schools in your community? Well, it's just people are just not aware, or they choose not to be aware of how their biases are fitting into their decision making. And then also, it's a lot of things that's happening in our youth, right? Some of the trends around intersectionality and different identities development that we can also give language to today. And I'm not saying this is new and unique, because everyone had different development, different identity development as young people. That's part of who we are as humans. However, we're starting to be able to give some more language and understanding to some of these identities development or perspectives that we probably didn't have, you know, maybe 15 years ago, et cetera. And so it's important for us to be informed of what's happening in our youth and some of the trends that's happening in our community youth or societal. Because why? Because it's very, very important that we not only be informed, but in case we have to really engage or we want to make sure our programs are inclusive, we can ensure that we're also putting things in motion. So what can you do about your awareness and education as a RYLA program? The first thing I say is you need to build D&I, diversity and inclusion, in all your volunteer training. Okay, what does that look like? Well, you have to start making diversity and inclusion a part of how we behave as volunteers. So you need to be able to blend it into your entire process. Where does it start? Well, it may start with yourself, because inclusion starts with the letter I, and then it may continue with your committee, who's ever on your committee. Let's have a conversation around diversity and inclusion. Let's talk about our strategy, but most important, let's talk about some of the best practices or how we can be informed of some of the trends that's happening in our community or the things that we don't know, right? So build that into your volunteer alignment, as well as, in RYLA, we sometimes have a lot of community volunteers who help and chaperone. Build that diversity and inclusion and understanding in that training as the expectation or a conversation. Or so it's up to you to examine that, but I suggest you make it a part of what you do and how you show up for RYLA. And of course, make a plan. I said discuss with committee members early, but one of the things that I'm encouraging people to do more is not only to be vulnerable, but also have courage to ask those tough questions and to talk about the things that may be very uncomfortable in your community or very uncomfortable within your committee. You know why? Because sometimes you may avoid, we see volunteers may avoid the conflict of the discomfort. And so I say, ask those tough questions. Who is not at the table, right? Who are we missing in our program? What type of challenges did we have last year of exclusion, et cetera? What about, are we accommodating all of our students? That this program can really be truly for all. These are some tough questions to unpack with certain committee members, but I say definitely have it. Of course, diversify your committee. It's very challenging for you to have a diversity outlook without practicing among yourself to ensure that you're being inclusive on your own committee, right? If you have the opportunity to have a club committee or district committee, I know sometimes they look different depending on where you live. And I always say, if you can, make some annual goals. And I'm not talking about quota and saying like, oh, we need 4 Black or brown people or 4 Black or brown. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it could be goals around, hey, we're going to do, 3 awareness seminars as a committee this year. That's our goal. Or, we're going to focus on this area of our priority around our inclusion strategy. Those are some of the goals I think you should think about. All right, let's go to challenge number 2. The number 2 challenge that I see that people ask me a lot about is their outreach and marketing strategy. Dr. Jenkins, how do we go and recruit underrepresented students and populations? Dr. Jenkins, what about this was really starting when, Rotarians and a lot of us start shifting our strategy from our website to social media, right? We had this selfie moment that everybody was having selfies, et cetera. Well, equivalent is really challenging, for you to recruit people who may not look like you, right? And they don't see themselves. Sometimes, like I say, once again, representation matters. So it's important for you to think about your inclusion strategy and your marketing, as well as your marketing outreach and social media presence, right? And I think this is a powerful opportunity for you to be intentional about your recruiting strategies, right? I think it's also very, very important that this is an opportunity for you to tell the stories of the participants, highlight stories, et cetera, allow for different representation, visible and invisible differences to share, if you will, because everyone connects with stories. And so it's really great if you could do that. You could do that by a blog. You could do that with videos. There's so many creative ways. But this is very, very strong. I strongly believe this is relationships are the key when it comes to recruiting and outreach. It's hard to recruit someone you don't know or a community you don't know. And so the best way to get to know someone, you guys know the answer, is to get out there, get engaged, get involved, and have conversation or serve together, volunteer together with stakeholders, et cetera, or make partnerships, right? Community partnerships is very, very critical. And I know we're in an interesting time that we're doing a lot of things online and virtual, but we can still build relationships. We can still have one-on-one coffee chats with different community leaders that impact our youth. RYLA has the opportunity to do that. You as the RYLA chair, guess what? You're bringing youth together and really teaching values and really helping leadership development. You don't have to do it by yourself. Continue to collaborate in the community, but don't wait until it's time to recruit, right? It's application season. Let's go ahead and start to get to know these people. No. Start early, my friends. If you can even start early with the school system, leverage the other Rotary outlets like Interact, right? We have a strong program at one of our schools that, if you're in Interact, you have a strong opportunity, to be sponsored for RYLA. We also have strong relationships in our district with the athletic departments of the various schools. They send some of either their top performing players or their players who need some leadership development, right? And what better way to do that is through RYLA. We also have some partnerships with some of the diverse fraternities, the historically African-American fraternities and sororities. They have a lot of young youth programs. And so we partner with them, the African-American fraternities and sororities, as an example, to really get to know their experiences, but most importantly, involve them in the program. So think creatively, think inclusive, and send who you're missing and send who you can partner and bring to the table, okay? Last but not least is our last challenge. And our last challenge, before I go into last challenge, I think it's also important, I talked about visuals earlier, but also think about, let me go back here, because I didn't highlight this, which is a key for us to continue to learn, which is our inclusive marketing language. Language and symbols, they mean something, my friends. And it's important for us to examine what are we putting out there or what we're not putting out there. So some of the things you can think about is gender neutral language. What do you mean by that? Pronoun usage, she, he, they. Not saying, come on, boys, come on, guys, maybe saying you all. Thinking about some of the things you put in your captions for your posts of who you're recruiting. This really just, kind of have someone kind of really review that from an inclusive lens, because sometimes your language can be targeting towards a certain gender profile. And that's something we could talk about later. I can give you a resource of some things to consider. But you want to be mindful of your language. And then as I was going on my next slide is with your symbols. Really thinking about the type of symbols you may put out or what is represented or who's not. Those things matters. Okay, just wanted you to call it out. Okay, here we go. Last but not least, the last challenge. I get asked a lot. Well, Todd, we have done a lot to continue to be informed, partner, and we did a great job of recruiting. But now, since we recruited, okay, what about the process of creating that space and environment while they're in the RYLA program or through the RYLA application process? So, and how do we make sure we're supportive to different backgrounds in our communities, et cetera? So the first thing I believe is that it starts with the volunteers in the program. Okay, and it also starts with the culture, the volunteers in the program, but most importantly, the program culture. What do you mean by that, Todd? Well, every year, you can look at your last 5 years and see the trends of what is the perception of RYLA in the community. When people show up to RYLA, what do they feel? When people leave RYLA, what do they feel? As they go and tell the story about RYLA, what do they say? Some of these things, as you do the assessment there, you can really start to understand how people may perceive the culture of RYLA. You may be able to articulate the culture of RYLA. in your program. The next thing I would say, when you talk about welcoming and supportive, is really starting to have these honest dialogues around what does support look like. Okay, we can really go through a laundry list of various different perspectives and identities and backgrounds, but I've seen the key in my practice as a district chair is to go ask the parents or the students, how can we support you more? What are the things that we're not doing that we should be doing? What questions are we not asking that we should be asking? How can we help you have a great experience and ensure that you really get all you can out of RYLA? And I think the best way to do that is through honest dialogue. And what I've seen is, we have seen some RYLA districts, be a little more progressive on their application process, and they start to allow the applicant to disclose, is there any things from a diversity standpoint or identity or background that they should be aware of, right? Anything from gender, from a gender identity that they should be aware of. And that allows for you to potentially have that conversation because they have disclosed that. I'm going to also tell you a lot of things that I run into is that I have volunteers call me with assumptions, right? Rotarians say, oh, I think this person identified this way, but I really don't know. And so how do we navigate that? I'm telling you, my friends, that's a slippery slope. It's very, very important for you to do all you can to make sure your culture is open, making sure that representation is in your application and your social media, as well as even your staff. That's how people are feeling more safe, connected to share about their backgrounds, wherever it may be, whether it's visible or invisible differences. Okay, so really think about that dialogue. The next thing I also see as a big challenge of when it comes to support is the overnight activities for various groups. Sometimes it's been a lot more manageable and easy when I get calls about accommodation for disabilities. But one of the hot topics that I continue to get, that we discuss a lot, is around gender identity or transgender applicants or students, and navigating, the room environment, or how do we make accommodations? And I always tell people, just in case if this is a question for this group, is let's go back to our values as Rotarians and what we stand for as RYLA. We value all our differences. Differences is actually one of the core diversity is a core value of Rotary International. And it's also, I believe, it's a value of RYLA. So we definitely believe in diversity. And if you also believe in inclusion, which I think and I hope you do, but I don't want to make assumptions, I would say that the best way to talk and navigate those situations is really have that conversation again with the student and the student and the parent, et cetera. They will really help you I have really learned that they will, if you give them the space and you have a great open mind and facilitate it in a way, they will inform you how they wish to be treated, right? Once again, it's not the golden rule. Treat people how you want to be treated. No, my friends. It's the platinum rule. Treat people how they wish to be treated. Because once again, we learned earlier, equity, or equality, the way I feel that you should be treated, you may not want to be treated that way. So I say definitely have that conversation. And we could talk through, if you guys have that as a question, we could talk a little bit more about some of the best practices or specific incidents if you want to bring it up. But once again, you don't have to do this alone. Utilize your local resource centers. There's a lot of resources in your community that focus on different diverse groups, and they could be a partner with you to help you navigate these situations, et cetera. Or have a DEI committee, subset of your group. I tell people sometimes when we talk about the LGBTQ or GLBT, however, we kind of group all all those acronyms together as one approach. But I'm telling you, my friends, I suggest that you separate the T from that acronym, because when it comes to accommodation and feeling safe, it's different from a process and development and identity perspective. So that's something that we're continuing to unpack. Of course, mentoring is great with diverse students, ensuring that they have a mentor, someone who's checking in on them and giving their support while they're in the program. So here's a few items of what you can do about that challenge, as well as we move forward and wrap up. To really, truly build inclusion, my friends, you can't just do one item, okay? Inclusion is an ecosystem approach. So I tell you, as RYLA volunteers or engagers in youth programs, is think about the entire life cycle of a RYLA participant and really examine that as a club. That could be your homework as a committee or as a leader. Examine that and really think about what are the areas of opportunities that you can strengthen or explore to really increase diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout your entire process. And I really, like I said earlier, I think it starts with the relationship building, but continue to look at your application, how you interview, how you select. What about their onboarding? What about their first day experience? How do they choose their groups, et cetera? And don't forget, last but not least, also, when they leave the program, it could be another track for RYLA alumni, or how you want to engage them for future events and activities, because we need our youth. We need our youth, and our youth actually, they need and they can learn from us. So we need each other. So I know I said a lot very, very fast, and I hope that you're still with me. I do, like I said, I do apologize. It's around 10:18 p.m. right now on my time. But I would tell you, I know I said a lot, but remember this. In this work, I've learned that small changes can make a big difference. So think about, what are some small changes you can do to make a big difference in the RYLA program to make it really more inclusive, because we all have that opportunity. And remember, if you can see it, you can be it. And I want to leave you all with that actions speak louder than words. And that's what I hope from today, that not only you were able to learn a little bit about what D&I from a level set, but most importantly, some of the opportunities and challenges and what you can do about it to take action, because we are people of action. So without further ado, I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Hopefully it was something that I shared that you were able to gain a different perspective. But here's my contact information. If you want to connect with me, I'm on like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Dr. Bowtie Todd, as well as I'm about to come on here shortly to join you all live for Q&A. So Mike, I'm going to turn it back over to you to see if you have any comments.
Okay. Sorry about the communications issues there. This was a very, very last minute thing for us. But Dr. Jenkins is on with us. So if any of you have any questions, please post them in the chat window and we'll run through them.
Yes, well, first, let me, am I unmuted here?
You are.
Okay, awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. It is so good to see you all. I definitely apologize for any, I think you guys had some technical issues, Mike was telling me. So I do apologize. It was nothing on our end, but I'm not sure what happened. And thank y'all for your patience. You guys listened to me speak on a recording, and I had to record that last night because, as you all can see, I'm in the middle of our baby shower, and they had basically a virtual baby shower for us, as well as a drop-in baby shower that our sister-in-law surprised us with from Mexico. And so, yes, they gave me a grace period of 10 to 15 minutes to come out and jump back in. And thank y'all so much for your patience. So yeah, so let's open it up for Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and place my contact information in the chat. And you can contact me as well if you want resources, or if you want to jump on a one-on-one, or if you would like for me to speak at your RYLA. I do a lot of talks at RYLA or whatever. I'm here. So let's open up the lines. Let's do this. Are there any questions for me? Any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Any questions? Yes.
My name is Melody St. John. Hi, Todd.
Hey, Mel.
Just want to know if you got our baby shower gift. No, seriously. I just want to know, on our application, we do have gender identity, male, female, how do you identify? So we had a young lady who prefers to be a male, and her parents signed off on that when we didn't know about it until we got up to RYLA. Where do we put her in a cabin? I'm serious. We do have a single cabin, but I think that almost separates them further. What is anybody's thought or your thought?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. So I think we got to really kind of go back to the system and the process of the application, and let's examine that, because we know that one way that the parents may identify their child, the child may identify different. And so what we do is, if you can have some more opportunity to examine your application to ensure that the student have signed off as well as the parent, right? I think also another great perspective of this is really when you guys have your interviews, right? When we do our interviews, sometimes we do interviews for applications and sometimes we don't. But if you have a conversation, if you're able to talk to kids and kind of do a more informational interview, you can kind of have those conversations with the kid and the parents on the front end. However, in your situation, now they have shown up and now they're there. And now the child has said, hey, I don't identify with this gender, and what are my, what do we explore? Because you guys already probably prearranged logistics and accommodation if they were already met. So I think having a at case-by-case basis on how you can examine that as a plan B. So I think the great thing of that call out, Melody, is that everyone on this call have heard that could be a situation. So now what we need to do is prepare for those type of situations. So, and not waiting until we react. And so let's be proactive and let's think about what do we have as a plan in place if a student who identifies as a different gender that we did not find out on the front end and they show up and want to be placed on the back end, what can we do about that? And I think that looks different from everybody on this call based on your club culture, your district culture, and also your facilities. And so that's what I would just kind of encourage at this moment, is that this is an opportunity for you to go back to your district or your area and have that conversation, and let's make a plan. And if we need to talk about that one-on-one, we can do that as well.
So thank you for that, Todd. Kate, one of our facilitators, wrote in that one of our non-binary committee members helped us draft a registration question. So they ask whether the student is male, female, or binary, and contact all the binary students in advance to find out what they prefer with the options that they have.
It should be non-binary, sorry.
Yeah, it should be non-binary. Oh, yeah, okay.
I know, it's non-binary.
Sorry. No, okay, now we're good. I was about to say, yes, we're missing, non-binary. But yeah, hey, and I think, Kate, if you can share that resource or your application link with everyone as a resource, maybe that could be another great best practice.
We also have an open question that says, do you need special assistance, or is there any other information that you would like to share so that we can better serve you? And we've gotten lots of information about disabilities, chronic conditions, and other things we wouldn't know about.
Fantastic.
Yep, totally agree with that, because the more we can ask in our application, I suggest that you guys do it open-ended, because it'd be amazing what the students would share in that application, who can help, can help you be proactive. So great job.
So Adrian, you're next.
Yes, thank you for this great presentation. My question is, what are some of the best practices you've seen Rotary clubs do with their RYLA camps to make them more inclusive?
Yeah, so as I was trying to talk a little bit about it in my presentation, first I think it depends on who is excluded and who's not represented in your camps, right? And it's also in various avenues, right? You can talk about, let's start with how we're having an inclusive climate and culture with our students, representation in our program. We can also talk about the climate and culture of our volunteers, the staff or the people who are overseeing the program. And you can also talk about the inclusive climate and culture of the partnerships. And so I think we got to examine them all and not kind of do a blanket approach and really kind of spend some time of who we need to be a little more intentional with to make sure we're striving for inclusivity. The next thing I would say is a best practice is understanding that we don't need to do this work by ourselves. That's a best practice, is to go practice this with other people. Go practice this with other stakeholders in your community that's doing the work, and allow for us to learn and grow together. And that's how we can achieve more, because we're not going to have all the answers, but the answers are in our community. So partner with other groups, not just for recruitment, but just for learning and for connectivity. And then from a student representation, as I was saying earlier in the presentation, another best practice is ensuring that you do have diversity of speakers who's speaking at the RYLA camp. If you guys have some keynotes or motivational talks, see if you can have people that come from different backgrounds, or sometimes leverage some of the students, the alumni who have diversity in their background to showcase them as well. So really just think about the ecosystem, if you will.
So next, Asa.
Hi, I had to pop in and out on your presentation, so I apologize if this was unanswered. I'm just a full-time student, so I was doing things. But it was a great presentation. I was just wondering, what would you do in situations where I've been in these situations where I strongly feel that things like cultural appropriation are happening. How would you approach that in like talking to the people that are like without offending them and like kind of explaining your point of view? Because I've had trouble with that because, obviously.
Yes, that's a great question. And I appreciate your courage to ask that question, because you will be surprised how so many people see something that they may not believe that it's right, but they don't have the courage to seek or how to navigate that situation. So I appreciate your courage in that question. The first thing is that I will recognize is that everything is situational, and so it all depends, but I say it is some standards, right? It's some standards of making sure that the environment is safe for you to be able to, and comfortable for you to be able to respond in a way to have that conversation with the stakeholders, whoever facilitated as such, right? So that's number one. That comes down to the culture of the program and the culture of what's happening at RYLA camp. Also, you always know it's kind of some leadership that's probably in command that you could probably go have that conversation with. I have seen that most Rotarians or most RYLA leaders are open to understanding about those differences. The RYLA leaders, right? And I'm not saying the person who probably owned the facility. I wouldn't say go talk to the Rotarian that's over that program and just bring some understanding and seek to if you can understand and give your perspective. The other thing I would say, last but not least, is really think about also how you can be an ally or engage with others who also have seen that, and you guys collectively have that conversation with the organizers. But that's what I would say for how you can navigate it. But also understand standing up for yourself could be pretty challenging. So also understand you don't have to do it by yourself, and look for other allies who can join you in that conversation. Great question.
Next
Thank
question.
you so much.
What are some techniques or activities to introduce DEI to a very homogeneous club or district?
Ask that question one more time. I'm sorry.
What are some techniques or activities to introduce DEI to a very homogeneous club or district?
Oh, yes. Well, I think you got to start with what do you mean by homogeneous and what is actually coming to mind? Are you saying race, ethnicity, gender, age, all the above? I think we got to start there with the basics of understanding the true story. As I said in my presentation, starting with what is diversity, equity, and inclusion? So many people come into the conversation and they just want to dive right into action. It's like, let's go ahead and make it work. But no, it's not. Many people create the space, grace and compassion to just unpack, how do we show up to these words and what do these words mean for us? And so I think for that individual, start that conversation with that group or that club or that district to say, what do we mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion? Who are we in this space? Where do we want to go? And what do we need to do to get there? I think some of those fundamental questions can really help you land upon a great place. The other thing is a great conversation starter is leveraging stats and data of your community, of your club, of your district, of Rotary International, and allowing the data to be a vehicle for conversation. Right? So sometimes people tell me a lot, well, we may not be very comfortable expressing our opinion on this issue of D&I, but the data has really allowed for people to really look at this in a different perspective. So leverage some of those tools. I think that could be helpful. The other thing I would say is, of course, if you can invite a speaker to really help facilitate the conversation or to help level set the understanding before y'all move into action planning. But I believe that there's hope to continue these courageous conversations in our clubs of all shapes and sizes, and we can do it.
Thank you, Todd. So this one, I'll just combine two together. What do you see as the biggest obstacles, or what is your biggest concern about diversity issues in both Rotary and RYLA?
Oh, wow. Well, this is my profession as well as my practice, my research area, and this is who I am. And so I every day, depending on climate, culture, and situations, it's different barriers and obstacles. And when you say what is the biggest, is that I think so many times we respond to moments and we forget about the situation that we're in. And sometimes my encouragement to everyone is not allow this conversation, this presentation today to be a moment. Let's make it into a situation about doing something of action, of this is how we show up, this is how we think, say, and do, this is how we behave in a way that we're building inclusion. That's become a challenge because so many times we have great conversations and we get motivated. And then 27 days later, it kind of was out of sight, out of mind. And that's not unique to RYLA or Rotarians. That's unique to human behavior. And so, in order to really change that, that challenge, that obstacle, you can go ahead and start to think about that one thing or that one priority that you want to go ahead and focus on for your RYLA program, and commit to that, and let's see that through, so it can be sustainable. So that's what I will kind of see as far as the obstacle or challenge that I hear a lot is, how do we sustain the momentum? How do we continue to have the conversation? How do we learn? And this is a journey that we're on, my friends. Let's get beyond RYLA. This is a journey as human. This is a journey as society. And everyone has different level of maturity in this space. And it's not up to me to judge your level of maturity or you to judge mine. So we need to continue to practice empathy, grace, and compassion together, so as we can belong and continue to increase our journey for our students and for Rotary all around the world.
Thank you. So Adrian is asking, does any district have a DEI plan as it relates to RYLA? If you have, raise your hand.
That's a great question. I would say put it in the chat, because what we're seeing in Rotary Youth Program, because I sit on the DEI International Task Force, RYLA is not a part of the conversations that many people are having. It's really Rotaract, and that's really it. So I encourage you guys to dig a little bit deeper, because you guys can really trailblaze in this space. RYLA, Interact, Youth Exchange have been having these conversations since I've been a part of that program. They've been having it even before I got there. And so I say this is a great opportunity for Ask RYLA chairs to go ahead and create something and share. That's one thing I love about Rotary, is that we can just continue to share and lean on each other. So therefore, please continue and go ahead and set up your plan. And you could be very intentional about what you're trying to deliver. But I would tell you, on the national level, international level, this conversation around D&I and RYLA has not been intentional. I'm just being honest.
Okay, we have time for a couple of more quick questions. I have no more in the chat window, and I see no hands raised. We might let you get
Hey,
back.
Gary.
Really.
Gary, did you have a question?
Yeah,
John have
I
a
did.
question? I see your hand.
See if, yeah, I'm on mute. Yeah, the question I had was one, can we get emails for the moderators and the speakers? And then also would the video, the recording be available at some time shortly?
Yeah, I forwarded
Yeah,
the video to Chris so he can get it uploaded. He or Art would be the ones that would send you the contact information for the moderators and facilitators.
Thank you for
Great.
that. So on the video, I have sent that to Mike Markley, who is our tech person, and I've asked him to load it onto our YouTube channel. So I will post that YouTube channel link below. I did include it earlier in the session, but I will include it below. I cannot make any promises as to when it's going to be uploaded, but hopefully within the next couple of days. And then if you could follow up.
Todd's contact information is in the chat window. So if you open the chat, you can pull down his contact info.
Hey, Mike, it's Joanne Hilton here.
Yes.
Hi. I just want to share something because it underscores what we've been talking about. I was a RYLA counselor 2 years ago, and I had in my small group, it's a week-long RYLA, by the way. In my small group, I had two, count them two, who identified during the week as being transgender. They did not identify prior to that. And it was quite a challenge because we weren't really all that prepared for that. And one of the things I just wanted to share about it was the difficulty in remembering the pronoun, because they both wanted to be known as they, not he or she, after we'd known them as he or she. So it was one who presented as a male and then one presented as a female. So that was quite a challenge. So I'm just bringing it up to share that this does happen. And it was not something we were very well prepared for, and quite a learning experience for somebody who hasn't had that before. So I don't know if, Todd, you have any comments on that, but it was an interesting situation.
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, we got to once again give ourselves some grace and space. We're not going to always get it right. It's a learning, it's like a skill and a muscle that we haven't practiced. We got to continue to strengthen it. But the great thing about a muscle, you got to get in the gym every day to work at it and build it, right? And so I think that's what this journey is all about, is really continuing to unpack and unlearn. It's something changing every day. It's just that 30 years ago, we didn't have a coin or terminology. Now research have been able to talk about intersectionality and pronouns, et cetera. And as we continue to grow, things are going to change every day. But this is the point here, is that this is why it's important that you guys make D&I learning a part of your volunteer training, your counselor training. Everyone who's going into that RYLA camp, because what's going to happen is people come out during RYLA camp. People tell things to their peers that they never told their parents. And they're not going to tell you in their application. People share very vulnerable moments. And so how are counselors prepared to navigate those situations and also give the support? And that's where we can come in to really examine our curriculum on the front end so we can be better on the back end. Great comment. Thank you so much for sharing that.
John Winterstein,
Okay,
you had
John.
something.
Yeah, go ahead. I think you're muted, John, my friend.
Speaking of 30 years in the past, I attended a 4-hour required LGBTQ-other training. It was put on by the Boy Scouts of America, which for those of you know, there's a lot of issues there. But what they predicted was in 30 years, all the camps, every place, the living accommodations will be without regard to gender, and everything will depend on individual shower facilities, and everybody has to go to those shower facilities to change clothes, except maybe there would be a couple small dressing rooms in each dormitory where people could use for 2 minutes to go in and change clothes. That to me was kind of shocking, but it was also thinking, where do we have to go in the future with RYLA for this? Because some of the solutions we do not yet have, and some of them for most Rotarians would be outrageous. Putting boys and girls in the same cabin and things like that. Well, you have to have the physical facilities, but that's not terribly expensive. So if you think of, well, where are we going to be? Where is society going to drag us in the next 30 years? You have to have an open mind.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Todd, and also Mike for these presentations. In recognition of the time, we are going to have to bring things to a close, but I want to note that we had sent out a survey after our last conference. It went out a little late, and we only got about 14 responses. And so I'm going to have that same survey sent out more quickly after this conference and ask you to please respond to it so that we can get this information. And as I promised then, we will then share that information with all of you. But 14 responses really wasn't representative enough to be able to share that. So watch for a survey and please respond to that so that we can give that, that information out to everybody. I want to also announce that our next Rotary Youth Services Task Force conference that we're going to be sponsoring is the one on Interact. Please reserve the date of Saturday, March 20th. That will be our conference on Interact. And then we have another conference we'll be scheduling for Rotary Youth Exchange. We'll be doing another one that'll be entirely on youth protection. And so those things will be coming up, but I just wanted to let you know, give you a heads up that our next conference will be on Interact, Saturday, March 20th. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming on board and sharing your time with us and your insights, your questions. I particularly want to thank Kate Mattis, Colton Cagle, and Asa Moret for their presentations, and of course the presentations by Mike and Todd. Thank you so much. Hope you found value in this day and that you'll join us for our next conferences. Bye and God bless.